Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.
Ockham's Razor was founded in 2004 by Alex Harvey and Charlotte Mooney, who are still joint artistic directors of the company. They have directed and toured many large-scale circus-based productions over the last 2 decades, but their latest show, Collaborator, is an intimate two-hander that sees the company founders back on stage together for the first time for a few years. I spoke to Charlotte while the show was still in rehearsal and asked her to explain what the show is about.
Collaborator, so I'm from a company, Ockham's Razor. We're a contemporary circus company. And the company is run by myself and my partner, Alex Harvey. And we founded the company together, 22 years ago.
Yep, 2026 now.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We basically met in 2003 at a circus school that we were both at in Bristol called Circomedia. And out of that, we came out and we founded the company and we started making shows together. And we've been making shows ever since. And we lie on the contemporary side of contemporary circus, where basically we use the movement of circus to tell stories. So it's very much on the kind of physical theatre, visual theatre side of circus.
Yeah.
And so we've worked together for a long, long time. We originally in the shows. At some point, we're also partners in life. Like, we got married. We have a daughter who's now 10. After our daughter was born, we actually made a piece of work sort of about that experience with a performer in her 60s and an 11-year-old performer and the two of us. So that was the last time we performed together, which was about 6 years ago. And that was about the process of building a family and time and how you change over time. Then, because we had a small child, we basically became directors because it was just much more efficient because we didn't want to live on the road touring shows all the time and being in shows all the time. So we started directing more. We created a body of work that we've directed. That was amazing because, it was fitted for our lifestyle. We made some beautiful shows. They toured. And then somebody said to us probably about a year and a half ago, have you stopped performing then? Is that it? Have you retired? And we realised that had sort of happened by default and we'd never actually made the decision to stop.
Right.
So we were like, okay, have we stopped? Are we never going to perform together again? And then...
like the Beatles never actually making the decision to split up, they just didn't.
Yeah, exactly. It sort of happened. Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, this seems to have happened.
Yeah.
And because we were asked the question, we were like, And Alex particularly said, I'm quite sad at the thought of that. That sort of just happened. And we had a gap. So basically the last show we made was a really big show called Tess, which was an adaptation of Tess of the D'Urbervilles, cast of 7, really quite big show, was really successful, toured loads. And we know that the next show we want to make is called Greed, and it's an adaptation of an Ovid poem about basically a king that becomes very power mad and he ends up devouring himself. It's a parable for the modern day about megalomaniac leaders. Yeah. Also, probably slightly less cast, but a big show. Big, can wash its face in quite a big venue, huge visuals. That show, Greed, would take time to raise money and momentum for. So there's this little gap of a year. And we said, okay, shall we make a duet? Should we just see what happens if we perform together? One last show, one last gig. What would we make?
The first farewell tour, then.
Yeah, exactly. It's our first farewell tour, exactly. So that's why it's called Collaborator, because it's made sense to us. Simple, keep it. Occam's Razor. The philosophy of Occam's Razor is keep it simple. That's basically what it means. We'll make a show about what it is to have made work with someone for 20 years, what that's been like, what it might be like to stop doing that. And that's what this show is. So that was a very long answer for what the show is. So it's a two-hander with the two of us.
Yeah. So, the whole history of collaboration is important to understanding the show, really, isn't it? So a long answers are perfectly appropriate. But what's it like if you've not performed together for 6 years and you've been performing together for over 20 years? It's a very physical form of performance. Bodies change. So what's it like coming back to it now?
Yeah, very good question. So we had a year, so we knew, because I'd done very little. I'd literally done. Did he perform later than me? Maybe he didn't. Yeah, so I'd literally done very little training at all. And like the performance that we do together is, so with our company, we've always made newer pieces of equipment rather than working on traditional equipment. So very often, rather than like a trapeze, if it's a doubles trapeze sort of movement language, we'll make a metal frame or something that's adjacent so you can use the skills, but it doesn't look like a trapeze. We've always done that so that things look more like set rather than like traditional circus equipment, because I think it helps people read into it metaphorically. But basically the movement practice that we had as performers was doubles trapeze. That was the thing we were strongest at. And neither of us done any sort of doubles trapeze, like 5. I think by the time we finished performing, it's been like 4 years ago, because we made that show and it toured for a bit. So we put aside a year to get strong. And we were like, we're just going to train for a year. And that we did. We got a personal trainer. I'd never done this. I mean, circus training is supposed to. I'd never actually gone to a gym ever. I just got strong by doing circus. So we're like, no, we're going to do it properly.
Yeah.
So we got this horrendous, beautiful man called Charlie Dark, who made us this punishing program. And for a year, we did it in our kitchen, literally between running the company and having a daughter, and Tess was on tour. So we were doing all the other logistics of running a company, and then occasionally for 3 hours on our kitchen floor, we'd do sit-ups and pull-ups and lift weights and do all the boring stuff, not really knowing how strong we'd be at the end of it. So we did that for a year. Then at the end of the year, we went into a rehearsal room and we're like, right, let's see what we got, and started working out on pieces. And discovered that it does actually get you strong. That was the first thing, like, that works. And then started moving together again. And it's been really interesting. It's been really interesting. We're both 47. And I think circus, especially something like doubles trapeze, is actually quite good for your body.
Right.
Because it's not impact. It's quite slow muscle. Not like fast muscle twitch necessarily. The kind of movement we do is that we lift and fold around each other, and it requires a huge amount of strength and flexibility. But it's slow muscle twitch. You don't need the explosion of a 20-year-old acrobat.
Right.
And I think somebody had told me this years ago, that what you put in your body young tends to just stick around.
Right, yeah.
And that's definitely been the case. Like, it's basically all still there, which was a really surprising thing, because I think we both thought the challenge of making the show would be the physicality. And actually that hasn't been it. The physicality has come back after initial training. It's pretty much swiftly, and it's been really lovely to find that in some ways we're stronger. I think it's because over years and years, decades of doing it, you build technique.
Yeah.
Your body gets really efficient at shortcuts. And I'd say from a personal perspective, it's been really lovely to have that physical connection again after not having it. Lots of physical connections drop away when you're busy and stressed and you've got a small child. But just to have that one where it's really technical, but a technical way of holding each other and understanding how each other's bodies work. It's been really lovely, actually, to reconnect with that. The hard bit has been making a show about yourself and not disappearing up your own arse.
Yes,
My friend, about a week into it, we were like, what are we doing? It's so hard to make work about yourself that get the line right, that is still interesting to other people. So the biggest challenge has not been the physical, it's been the artistic.
Right. Has that been quite exposing then, to be portraying yourselves on stage?
Yeah, potentially. Our biggest worry is that it would still be relevant to anyone else.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't be self-congratulatory or self-flagellatory. Yeah, it wouldn't be too self-involved. Weirdly, the thing that's helped us out in that was not we had an unexpected thing to help us, which is that we really wanted this to be of use and of service to other makers. We're really aware that it's just the two of us in a room, and we wanted to open it up, like find a way to make it kind of more relevant and useful to the circus community. And what I mean by that is often increasingly we've had quite big casts, and we've done loads of workshops, and we've tried to through the course of making something, open it out. We get loads and loads and loads of people writing to us saying, can we watch your rehearsal process? Like always, like I think it's the thing that's most useful to a young maker is to be in the room and see how things are made.
Yeah.
So for this, what we've done is every Friday that we have an open rehearsal and there are 30 spots. We wanted to pay people, but we didn't get the funding, so they're free.
Right.
But ideally we pay people for their time, but we weren't able to raise the money to do that. But we have 30 spots. And any young person can apply, or older person. The idea is that it's somebody like a point in their career that's useful to them.
Yeah.
To come along and watch a rehearsal. So we did that, and we did that so that we would show them all the material that we'd made thus far in the process, and say, right, this is what we've done. This is where we are. These are the things we're tussling with. Like, what would you do? Like, so we'd show them a bunch of material and then have a chat and be like, okay, what would it occur to you to do, so that people get the kind of practice of dropping into a rehearsal and tussling with those questions themselves, like kind of as a practice.
Yeah.
And it proved to be, well, number one, incredibly vulnerable.
Yes.
It's just showing people stuff that's like, I know this doesn't work. I'm going to show it to you. Let's talk about why it doesn't work. Secondly, though, amazing, because we were able to figure out, like, how do we make this relevant? And people would say, there's one scene in particular we call the running dance. And it's basically we basically sprint for 8 minutes on stage, and it's about the tussle of making work, and lots of things happen through it, but it always comes back to a sprint.
Yeah.
And people said within it, people that were saying, I see in that my relationship with my work partner I've been with for 20 years. Other people would be like, oh, I see my relationship with my dad. So we discovered like, oh, great, this thing can read as trying to do something difficult with another person, but it's quite universal. So those conversations each Friday with a bunch of people really helped us manage to gauge, like, calibrate the work so that it was honestly about my relationship with Alex and the different things we've been through trying to work together, but also felt like it was a universal metaphor that it was something that other people could tap into the metaphor of it and recognize their own struggles of working with someone else in it.
Yeah, relate to their own experiences.
Relate to it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but what's it like working with a partner for a life partner? I mean, I can imagine every partnership goes through its ups and downs, but you need a lot of trust. If you just had an argument before you go on stage, are you a little bit worried? Or
yeah, someone asked me this the other day. Actually, I mean, there's a rule in circus, which is if they're your partner or not, that you resolve an argument before you have to do something dangerous. And there's a lot of practices in the circus room that we use. I mean, the theatre room use it as well, about like checking in at the beginning of a rehearsal, checking out at the end. A check-in is basically you pass an object around. You can't be interrupted while you hold the object. It's like the conch.
Yeah.
And you just tell everybody how you're doing that day. You do it in circus particularly because it's the opportunity. You have to stop and create space at the beginning of the day to say what injuries you might have. It's like this shoulder thing is starting to grumble now. So everybody knows and we can address it. It's really easy to sit on an early injury and not say it.
Yeah.
And that's how you get in trouble. Because people panic as well, especially younger performers sometimes panic that if they've got an injury and then can't do a move today, will the person be cross? And you need to create a culture really early on that you can say these things and be looked after and not do that trick today and get a physio and whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
But the other thing is emotionally that people can say where they're at. And if they're, if they haven't slept or if they're upset or if there's something going on, they don't have to bring stuff they don't want to talk about, but just so you know where people are. Because if tensions are rising, people aren't getting on, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It will, and we're really keen on that, like having a rehearsal room that's open, emotionally supportive, quite kind, is really important. And their practices, I think the work practices that we've been practicing for years and years and years have actually entered our relationship. And so we're really good at conflict, at managing conflict with each other. And the other thing, there's a theatre director called Phelim McDermott and another one called Matilda Liza. They work together in Improbable Theatre. And we've done a lot of work with both of them. In the last year, I've worked a lot with Matilda. And they're one of the things that he said to us years ago was, if you're having an argument or disagreement, there's a knee-jerk reaction to be frightened of that. Like, oh no, we're disagreeing.
Yeah.
But actually, if you're interested in the disagreement, like, this is really interesting. Like, we got radically different opinions about this. I'm kind of interested. What's going on there? It loses its power to be destructive. Becomes something interesting between you. And that's been the most useful thing for making work, but it's also really useful for your relationship. When that's happening, when you're clashing, that like something's going on here. Like, we both care about something, and to be interested in it rather than frightened of it. So somebody came to the rehearsal the other day and they said, from watching the material so far in these open rehearsals, they were like, I see you two battling against stuff. I see you two going down the hole, like getting lost and having to like haul each other out. I never see a moment in this show when you like lose at each other and you scream at each other. Like, there's an intensity that you're not doing in this show. And I said to her, like, we tried it, but it just wasn't honest, because we don't do that. And so we haven't put it in. And it's controversial whether people are like, theatrically, I want to see you scream, but we don't. We really just don't.
Interesting you mentioned Improbable. I've interviewed Phelim a couple of times on this podcast, and he's a great guest. Some great things to say. Their work is, his work is very much based on improvisation and devised. Is that the same with your work as well?
So our work is completely devised. Yeah, and the source of that devising is we often use improvisation to find the work in the rehearsal process. This is so interesting you're saying this, because I've got a session with Matilda later to talk about this. This is because we're a week away. We've got one more week of rehearsals and then we open this show. And at the moment, there are bits of the show that are set. We've found a lot of our work's very choreographic, and also because it's very delicate balancing in the air, it wouldn't work to completely improvise it. So we do set it. And then it's our job to riff the rhythms of it, to keep it alive and to keep it as improvisational as possible. There are other bits of the show where I talk to the audience where I haven't set the words, but I kind of know what I'm going to say, to sort of keep at least so I can be awake and alive and respond to the audience. So I might say it slightly differently. But at the moment, there are bits of the show that we're figuring out the order that it should be in. So when we do these open rehearsals, it's very improvised how we talk. We'll say, oh, hey guys, actually we've got a feeling we're going to try this scene next, and we'll do that. We hadn't imagined we would do that in the actual show, but now we're both feeling that the more set it's get, we're going to lose something. There's something about the way we chat to people in the open rehearsal that feels so genuine that we're loath to lose it.
Right.
But by the time it gets to the theatre, we'll have figured out what's the most satisfying arc. So it will be set. So then we're like, how do we keep as much of an improvised, open relationship with the audience with a material that's getting increasingly set?
Right, yeah.
That's my question for Phelim.
I'm sure I have a very good answer for you.
Or Matilda, who is now the other artistic director. She's come in as a co-artistic director, also has the same practice. Yes, that's my question for them this afternoon. Is, can you help me do that? Because he has always said, and she as well, you can either coax a live deer on stage, and sometimes it will come and be magical, sometimes it won't come, or you can stuff the deer and put it on stage, and you'll always have the deer, but it will be stuffed.
At
the moment, we're on the verge of stuffing the deer.
I was looking back this morning at my review of Tess, which I saw in Manchester last year. It was one of my top 5 shows of the year last year.
Oh, thanks.
And there was one question I put in it. I noticed that you and Alex were down as director, but you also had a choreographer. And I was wondering where's the dividing line? Because it's all so physical anyway. What's directing and what's choreography in a show like that?
That's a really, really good question. Yeah, it was really hard with Nathan. So it's Nathan Johnson, who's a choreographer. So the hardest thing is coming up with those titles. The thing that's not hard is how we work in the room, which is maybe quite rare. That we found a really good working combination. So, for example, how it worked with Tess was this. The reason we definitely wanted him in was that our practice historically was aerial. And we've been around, Alex has done more acrobatic than me, but we knew that in Tess we wanted a lot of dance and we wanted a lot of acrobatic flow, I guess is the word you'd put on that. And we both have less training in that. I trained as a dancer, as a ballet dancer, and jazz and tap.
Right.
So sorry,
the traditional threesome.
Yeah, the traditional threesome. Like, you know, I was doing dance classes in the 80s. You know, like there was no contemporary dance where I lived. No. So that's what I would have done if it had been around. You know, so we wanted someone who had more of an understanding of acrobatic flow and contemporary dance, which Nathan has, because we knew that was going to be a skill in there. How it worked in the room was Alex and I would set the boundaries of play. So, for example, we would say, okay, so we know in this bit what we want is there to be a movement section that's harvesting. And we kind of know we want that to be like a harvesting dance. And we think the way to do that is to find movements that are like reaping or pulling, and then like slightly abstract them and then have it in like a formation. So you get reaping, two sets of people reaping, moving across the stage. And so see if we can evoke like the lines you get in a field, like the furrows, and the sort of movement of people's bodies through space, but not mime exactly.
Yeah.
And ideally, we want it to look like a Millet painting. So that's what we would say.
That's the brief.
That's the brief.
Yeah.
And then we'd be with Nathan and we'd be with the people in the room. And I would say, Nathan, my instinct is to send each of these performers out and tell them to each make 4 movements and see what they come back with. And he would usually, and he'd be like, yeah, that's my instinct too. Cool. So then what would happen? So performers would go out and they would make proposals for movement. So they would come back and be like, I've got this movement, this movement, this movement, this movement. And then I would say, Nathan, now your job is to shape that. So then I would step back and he would be the voice in the room to say, all right, on 3 of you there, 4 of you there, we'll pick that movement, and do that one 4 times. And kind of like the building of the nuts and bolts of it. And his amazing skill is to know, like, you know, how many turns to put in, like whether to make it more muscular or soft.
Yeah.
Like the sort of dynamics of the movement. And then he would sit back with me and Alex and we'd be like, okay, yeah, that bit doesn't quite work. That bit's good. And then we would fine tune it. And that's how it worked. So it really was like, it is very choreographic. So what we're doing is choreograph. I guess the brief we're giving is an understanding of a choreographic brief, and then he builds the choreography. But the performers, we put the performers down as co-devisers because they would also bring a sensibility. And part of the skill was in casting people who had this, who understood, who you could send off for a task for 10 minutes and would come back with material that was a credible bit of a movement abstracted that looked a bit like a Millet painting.
Yeah.
Like there's some performers that can do that. Yeah. It's partly about casting those performers. With Collaborator, Nathan has come in again and it's been a similar thing except that we're in it. So that's a little bit trickier.
Yeah.
So some of what Nathan has done really has been what you might call an outside eye, in that we've made some bits and we've done them to him and then gone, we think we see this and this. Do you see it? Do you see it? And then he'll go, yeah. And then he can fine tune the choreography and go, but it would read better if this bit was more muscular, this bit was floating, you know, whatever, like a choreographic note. So we've struggled with this. We were like, Nathan, what do we call you on this one? Do you want to be called outside eye? He was like, just call me choreographer.
Yeah.
I think that's where we landed. With aerial choreography, we've made, because that is our skill set and really particular to us. So yeah, maybe we'll be down as aerial choreographer. It's really hard. It's muddy, but it's not muddy between us, which is good.
Yeah. So it's simple in a rehearsal room. It's just describing it to other people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's quite rare that it's simple. And I think it really, you know, we've had other relationships in the past where people tread on each other's toes.
Yeah, yeah.
And partly it's like finding the right person with Nathan, we have a rare thing, which is we've got very, very, very similar taste, and we tend to see the same things in it.
Yeah.
So it's been really wonderful having him there as outside eye, because I trust him. If we do something and he goes, yeah, that reads, I trust him.
Yeah.
That I would, because this is the hard thing. We can't, at the moment, Alex and I are filming ourselves and then watching it back on film to try and direct ourselves.
It's not easy, is it?
It's not easy. I mean, the only thing I could hope for as well is that things always die on film. So hopefully, if I can see it on film, it'll read even better live.
Yeah, yeah. With something like Tess of the D'Urbervilles, Thomas Hardy wrote a lot of words, and words, you did use words, you had a narrator, which wasn't overdone like narration often does with adaptations.
Thank you.
But you're telling a story through movement. It's a completely different way of telling the story. So how do you go from one to the other? Particularly, it's not even realistic movement. It's a lot of it's abstract movement as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think what we wanted to do was, the thing about that book is, I love that novel. It's been with me, like I've read it so many times. I used to teach, so I did an English literature degree. So I'd studied it then, I think at school. And then my job when we first started the company was I would home tutor kids in the evening, and that's how I made money, and then make circus by day.
Right.
And I was earning any money from circus for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And it was on the syllabus for A-level. So I also taught it, which was the best thing ever, because you read it so closely. So I know that book like the back of my hand. Like, I've probably read it, like in the course of making the show, read it 40 times as well. But the reason we chose that novel was that it's so physical, and also it has a feeling in it, like the way that he writes. It's poetry, like he was a poet, but he evokes such strong atmospheres and a kind of feeling. And I knew that I could evoke the way I feel when I read it. I could create that feeling and movement, so that I could capture the feeling of the book without the words. And also the other thing I think about Thomas Hardy is that if he'd been alive when cinema was around, he would have made films, because it's so visual. Like, it's so much of the book is painted in pictures. And I was like, if we can get those visual pictures, we'll get the sense of it as well. Yeah. There were two things that really helped. Also, that it's a book about like so much physical labor is described in it, or yearning. And they're two things that Bodies and Circus does really well. Yeah. So I could do yearning, I could do physical labor. And then in terms of then the bit that we thought this is going to be the killer is the text. So we worked out everything we thought we could do physically, and then we're like, right, what words do we need so that somebody coming to see this show would understand what was going on? It would give them a steer towards what was happening. And so we pulled out the bits of information that you would need. So then I went to the novel and said, right, can I pull out those bits of information only using Hardy's words? So I did that. And then, because he's such an amazing writer and a poet, I think, when he would write like paragraphs, when you read them, they'd sound like speech. Yeah. They'd have the rhythm of speech. So then the task of giving it to having a storyteller, basically, a narrator who would, the idea was that she would tell the story to the audience, and this is what happened to me, blah, 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 and then it would go into a movement section. When I gave that actor those lines that I'd pulled out, and the first time she said them, it sounded like somebody had written it as dialogue. Yeah. And it was literally a paragraph of description because he writes with the rolling rhythm of speech. And then all the bits that are dialogue from the book, like the rare bits that were conversation, like Tess's words or the mother's words, he was so good at nailing how people spoke, all the different classes of society and like the differences between them, that then it worked as dialogue in a play format, right, really well. Like, you could hear the different characters. So, frankly, I think it was the easiest adaptation. For someone coming to an adaptation the first time, I think I was given a big gift on a plate. It's like, and I'm sure that's why it's been adapted so many times for film, because it works, and for television, because it's so easy to do. Yeah. Like, he's done it. He's done it. And the ironic thing is he did adapt it as a stage play, and apparently it was awful. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
It was famously a really dreadful adaptation. I met this Hardy scholar who had the script of it, and she was like, "Oh, it's a shocker." It's kind of amazing that he was the one person that couldn't do it.
Yeah, unlike Dickens with A Christmas Carol, who toured with that for years, isn't he?
Yeah.
What's it like touring one of your shows? How is it different from touring a conventional play? Because I can imagine there's a lot of issues with rigging and safety that are very different, that when you approach a theatre, they won't be as used to what has to be done for one of your shows as just putting scenery and lights up.
Yeah, I can't remember who the actor is. It's an old Hollywood actor. I want to say it's like I can't remember what it is, but he said they pay me for the waiting, the acting I do for free.
Right.
We've often said they pay us for the rigging, the performance we do for free, because you will turn up at the theatre at 10 a.m. You will rig all day. You will come back the next day. You will tech it to check that the rigging hasn't messed up the positions of the light. With a highly technical show like Tess, you'll also have a full technical session running all of the tricks, check the tricks again under light, and then do the show.
And this is every venue.
This is every venue.
Yeah.
Which is why it's really ruinous to tour, because it's so expensive, because you're in there for 2 days. You've got to pay the venue technicians for 2 days the time you're there. They're long days. At the end of the show, you've then got a 2-hour get out, 3-hour get out sometimes, to take it all down, put it in the truck. For a long show like Tess, they're not finishing till midnight. Right, so it's full on.
Yeah.
This show, the Collaborator one, we were thinking would be easier, but we've just realised that we need the full bloody trust to go up at each venue, because one of the things we did, like back in the day when we started, like 2004, 2005, we were often one of the first circus companies ever to go into theatres. And that's what we wanted to do. Like, we were really interested in taking circus and putting it in theatres and putting it in front of, like, I suppose a contemporary dance audience was the equivalent. We could think that was a touring thing that went to mid-scale venues, and to sort of follow that model, really. So often we put the rigging in venues. Like, we created a sort of network of mid-scale venues around the country. We would go in. It really helped that Alex is a rigger. Yeah. So he would look at the work they had on the roof. He'd look at the ratings they had. We used to rig more from the grids that were there, but it's really tricky because it changes venue to venue, and then it's a nightmare to try and hit the same point. So we bought a rig, like a big, imagine like a steel structure. We go in and we put that up ourselves, because then it's consistent, and we rig off that. Yeah. The tricky thing with that is how to hide it and mask it. It's annoying, because then you've got the big whopping rig in the wings that you can see it. It's not beautiful. So we tour with that. So we tour with a lot, trucks and stuff. It's just stuff. And time and expense and insurance and convincing venues that it's going to be okay. But I'm really glad we did that, because I think we did pave the way for other circus companies to come, and a lot of venues now have had circus and know which of their beams are rated and which can be rigged from, and, had done the first experience, so then are more likely to do it again. So, we were really, and we do go to new venues now, and it is a real... We really feel it for the sector. It's important to go to new venues to give them the confidence that it can be done. Yeah. And to work with technicians as well. Alex does a lot of work training technicians. I mean, we have a workshop that he's done a couple of times, actually specifically for women or non-binary technicians to train in aerial, just because there's a bit of a talent drain on people that... It's mostly so that if you're working in a technician as a venue technician, you won't suddenly become a rigger, but that if circus comes in, you can understand what's happening and what people are doing, and you can have the knowledge and the confidence to kind of see what they're doing and not feel like, oh, these people are coming and I don't know what's happening. So we offer training widely for venue technicians to kind of understand it, but also specifically for female and non-binary technicians.
It's you said it's an expensive process touring it, but I would imagine it's expensive full stop, this style, because you've got equipment and longer rehearsal periods as well, I would imagine, particularly if you're devising the shows as well. So how is all of this funded?
The other thing that's a real kicker is if you're doing anything with height, you need height. And rehearsal spaces that are high are also tend to be big.
Yeah.
And therefore they tend to be whoppingly expensive. So the most expensive bit of it, and this is the bit that's in the 20 years we've been doing it has changed massively, is rehearsal space. It's so hard to find affordable rehearsal space. When we started, we lived in, so we went to an audition in London in a really shonky old warehouse by Pudding Mill Lane in East London, and we went to this audition and we came, which we didn't get, by the way. We came out of it, but the people were living there. They'd built little houses out of plyboard. It looked like a sort of favela around the edge of a like training space that was freezing cold, like old Victorian warehouse, nothing in it. We turned up in this place, did our audition, which we didn't get, then went to the person that lived there and went, please, can we live here? We'll do anything. We'll move heaven and earth to live here. And he was like, yeah, actually, a room's available. So we moved from Bristol to London and we lived in this warehouse in this little plywood box. It was so cold. All we had was this big stove, and there was a scaffolding yard next to us that had offcuts of scaffolding. We'd go and bring back offcuts of scaffolding and put it. I mean, it was so bad for our lungs, we're now discovering, and the environment with the fatigue. We would fill this like big thing, like literally, it looked like it was the length of your like 2 meter by 2 meter stove, and we would just shove scaffolding boards in it, and it would glow red, and it would heat about a meter from it, and then the rest of the place still had ice on the windows. It was like so, but it was amazing because it was a huge space. There were 3 of them that were there. It was called the Hangar. There were 3 of them, and it was set up by a group of people who'd been trained to do the circus shows at the Millennium Dome. They'd met each other, and then they'd left the Millennium Dome. They'd set up this place. And it was a circus community of 3 warehouses, about 20 people living there. And we all made work there, and we trained there, and we put on performances there, and it was amazing. And then it got knocked down to build the Olympic Stadium. So we all got kicked out in like 2007, I think, round about then, maybe earlier. Yeah, timelines. Maybe it was about then. We all got kicked out. Some of them got relocated. There is another hangar that's now in Woolwich, and that's the sort of the business that survived out of it. But a lot of the bottom level of the chain, the food chain, which is us, we just got kicked out, and we were like, damn it. So since then, I'd say it's been hard to find space, because those spaces that used to exist in London on the edges, like those big old warehouses, they exist in Bristol for a while. So Bristol had them. Bristol had Unit 15, like where the Invisible Circus was. That went last year. So little by little, these big old spaces are being redeveloped. You know, places get gentrified and then it moves on, which is why I think there's more places. Like, I think Newcastle's got a bit of a scene. Sheffield's got a bit of a scene. Norfolk, Great Yarmouth. So there are a few places around, but somewhere like London now, you know, it's often you're quoted £500 a day for rehearsal space. You know, it's like, we're very, very lucky. So we're in the massively fortunate position that we're an NPO, a National Portfolio Organisation, which basically means the Arts Council give us regular money. So we've got money, I think, guaranteed now until April 2028. That's the latest round. I think that's right. I'm rubbish at remembering dates. Let's just say 27, 28, something like that.
Yeah.
And we make plans for that time. We give them to the Arts Council, and then we have to jump through the 10,000 hoops. There's just been, I'm sure you're aware, a review of the Arts Council. Finally, an acknowledgement that, you know, often our company is Alex and me in our kitchen. We have to do the same amount of paperwork for that money as the National.
Yeah.
So we'll have 4 or 5 people whose full-time job is to do that. We're also supported by an amazing production company, Turtle Key Arts, and we do have full administrative support from them. Otherwise, there's no way we could do this. And a general manager and finance manager and executive producer. So we have help. But we're still essentially a very small company. The money that we get from the Arts Council funds us, ticket sales funds us, applying to other funds funds us, doing work. You know, I work as a director, movement director, so does Alex for other companies. That brings in bits of money. So that's sort of how we do it. That's how we raise the money to do it. But touring has become exponentially more expensive year after year after year with cost of living crisis. Like, you know, venues can't heat their buildings. Like, I think a venue told us that their heating plan last year was £1 million to heat the building.
Yeah.
And so for them, it's having to be passed on. So we're finding things like we're going to venues and being charged, for things to open the building, to heat it.
Yeah.
If we want to go in and have a rehearsal the day, we're being charged for that, or the heating for that. Like we're finding costs that we've never had to pay for before. So it's expensive.
You can't do physical stuff like that in a cold building, can you?
No, you can't. And it's things like, touring costs. But you could get miserable about this and moan about this to the cows go. We're just trying to find a way. And that's partly this. Like, this show is much more affordable because it's just me and Alex, like Collaborator. It's just Alex and I. We pay ourselves, money from the core company. So it's not having to shell out for loads and loads of performers. But yeah, we're constantly trying to think of ways to do it, like clever ways to do it, to get commissioning and to still be able to make work.
Yeah.
And to tour work, because I think touring's the most, like one of the most things I found really beautiful about Margaret Hodges' review of the Arts Council is there was some acknowledgement within that of the philosophical, like of the power of touring, which I think just hasn't been acknowledged for years, that people see the importance. What has been seen is that a venue in a community must reach out to that community, must become a hub, must invite people through the door, must demystify theatre as being something elite. And that is absolutely important. But the other person that does that is the touring company that goes around the country and brings and cross-fertilizes ideas around the country and goes to little places and brings a piece of work and also, as a touring company, you go to places and you meet people and you make genuine connections with people and you learn what's happening in the country much better than any other way. You have an understanding of how things feel at the moment in Hull, and how they feel completely differently to Derry, for example. And that then it massively inflects your art and how you make work. So, yeah, and I think that bit of touring's just been totally not thought of for years, but I think a shift is happening.
Good. So what first made you want to run away and join the circus? Why did you go into this business?
I was like I said, ballet, jazz and tap kid. and really ballet was the thing. I loved it. And then I went to university and I briefly toyed with the idea of becoming an actual ballet dancer when I was about 11. And then I hit maturity, shall we say, and that wasn't going to happen. And so I just did it for pleasure. And then I got to 18, went to university, stopped doing any movement, smoked 20 fags a day, drank 5 pints a night, like had a ball, sat in a room and read poems and didn't move. And then after a couple of years, this was like, why am I I'm missing something. Like I am deeply, deeply, deeply missing something. I loved reading. I'd always loved that, but it was incredibly lonely existence. I'd always thought I'd be a writer, but man, I can't sit on my own in a room. Also, it's a weird thing when you write. You'll start writing and you'll look up and 6 hours will have passed. And I genuinely thought, I'm going to miss my life if I do this. It sort of frightened me. So I went to Sussex University, and for your third year, then they used to encourage you, even though I was studying English literature, they gave you free language lessons in sort of 12 languages, I think you could choose. And then your third year you could do in a foreign university. So I did Spanish. And so I went to Chile, to Santiago in Chile for my third year, because I had read that if you went to Chile, you could study theatre.
Right.
And I was like, I'd started doing theatre at the University Drama Society, and I'd sort of fallen in love with that. And I was like, I've gamed this. I can actually go and do drama school for a year and just try that out. Anyway, I turned up in Santiago. I went to my first, I went to the admin thing and said, I've signed up to theatre. And they were like, no, you have to study Chilean poetry. And I was like, no! So I ended up doing the most complex modernist Chilean poetry for a year and being like, oh man, my Spanish was not up to it. But in my spare time in Chile, by luck, in Santiago, there's a school which is was sort of one of the most forward-thinking physical theatre schools. And they cross-fertilised physical theatre and circus. And they had these performances that were on. And I was like hungry. Like whenever I heard a performance, I would go and watch it and like kind of try and suck it up.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know much about the history of Chile, but when I was there was 2001. So the Pinochet regime had gone for about 15 years, but it was still wasn't talked about. There had been no sort of reconciliation. The university I was at was called Católica. It was like super right wing. Some of the teachers who taught me had been the apologists for Pinochet. They had basically people that had written the underpinning of it. It was a very strange place to be as a kind of radical. I'd come from Sussex University. I was like, do they realise where they've put me? It was interesting. All my friends came from La Chile, which was the other radical university. What Pinochet did, the big thing he did was he disappeared people, so his opponents would be disappeared. But that was just not talked about in any art that I could see or any public discourse. It was like not mentioned. When you met someone, I found I would have to figure out if they were pro-Pinochet or you just have to kind of read the vibes. I remember I met this guy at university and he was teaching me the drums and I was like, brilliant. And I went to his house to practice and I went in and there were like oil paintings of the general on all the walls. And I was like, oh, right, okay. I hadn't realised I'd strayed. It was a very weird time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got invited to this performance, which was at the Mapocho railway station, which is where a lot of people were disappeared from. So it had been an interrogation centre, and then people would be taken into helicopters and dropped into literally thrown out of helicopters into the Andes from this site. And I went there one night and I heard that this school was doing a performance in this venue and I didn't know what it would be. And I went and there was music and there were loads of different things. And then this bit of performance started. There was 3 pairs of red silks hanging from the high tops of the kind of domed, like wrought iron roof of the train building. And everyone was sitting watching in total silence. 3 people came in and they climbed to the top of the silks and they did a drop, like a drop to the bottom of the silks and just lay there. And then the next, girls can make me cry talking about it now. Later.
Yeah.
The next person came in, unwrapped them, climbed to the top of the silks, did the same thing. 3 more people, and they just did it until there were the number of people on the floor who had been disappeared from that station. And the room was silent. And then it ended, and everyone was like, and I remember thinking at the time, they were able to get away with this because it was circus.
Yeah, yeah.
And after that, I was like, right, that's what I want to do. It was such an epiphany. It was like, I want to do that. When I came back to Sussex to do my final year of English literature, which I was still loving, it was still quite lonely. And my friend said to me, have you heard of this? And gave me this brochure for Circa Media in Bristol that was billed as a circus school for theatre performers or a theatre school for circus performers, radical, devised, like performance using the skills of circus. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And I was like, you know, I had drunk 5 pints and smoked 20 bags for 4 years. I was like, right, I want to do this.
Yeah.
I better start running. And I trained for 6 months before the audition and went to the audition and somehow had managed to get strong enough to get in. I was the weakest person there. That year was so brutal, that year of training there. But I always said to them, when I went in, I was like, I know I'm not going to be a performer. I want to learn how to do this and direct it. I hadn't thought I'd be a performer, but then, of course, I fell in love with the performing. And by, you know, at 23, you can get away with smoking fags and booze for a few years and still get that.
Up to a point, yeah.
Up to a point. Like the ballet legs were still in there somewhere. So, and then gradually, that's how I came to be.
That's a great origin story. I mean, it's amazing how something that powerful on a stage can really still emotionally affect you thinking back to it 20 or more years later, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's also made you, I can see it made you realise that a circus is so often just showing off skills and impressing people. And there's certainly an element of that in what you do, and it's very impressive to watch. But it can do more. It can tell a story. It can make a political point, and that's something that's stayed with you, I suppose, is it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I think the thing that it does is, I mean, people know about it now. They talk about mirror neurons and stuff, that basically when you watch a physical movement, what your body does is you get your brain literally fires up that movement in your body.
Yeah.
So in some way, your body is experiencing that movement. So if, for example, you're watching circus and somebody's on a swinging trapeze and it's got all of that, and they drop at the end and go, and throw themselves off. You in the audience literally are on a small level having that physical experience. So if someone goes and leaps off and you feel that physically, if you're able to harness the emotion of that, so you're making a piece about whatever, like somebody being really brave and committing to something and throwing themselves with the emotion of that, it hits you deeply, I think. And I think something like that piece that I described, it wasn't that you had the tumble, but what you had was the thing that moved you was the delicacy with each person was unwrapped, and then the delicacy of the climb of the next person to commit to this metaphor they're showing you.
Yeah.
So there was something in the climb that was impressive and vulnerable and incredibly moving because of that. Yeah, so it's something about the extremity of the physicality that is also very theatrically potentially powerful.
And that's something you've been pursuing ever since, I suppose, is it?
Ever since. Pursuing madly ever since. And I think it's there. Interesting. I was interviewed the other day by someone who said, like, what is circus? What is circus? He gets asked that quite a lot. What is circus? And it's a killer because it's juggling, it's acrobatics, it's aerial, it's clowns. Yeah, like it's like roller bowler, it's unicycling. It's like a mad collection of things that weirdly go together. And I think part of what they go together is this: there's an extremity of peril in it. It deals in that, and that's the unifying thing, that it deals in like risk and going against like danger and the impossible, and also in like 3 dimensions, and often the pleasurable, satisfying thing of a trick with an object. That's often in there as well. There's something in that like that comes close to magic as well. There's a sort of a delight in invention as well. I would say that's a big part of it, because often with circus, the other thing is why I love it is that it's historically people make their own acts.
Yes, yeah.
So that devising
and they do it for life, don't they?
And you do it for life, yeah. That you figure something out on your own, and that you're probably a bit of an outside, like the outsider bit of circus, I think is still there as well.
Like music hall acts, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is very like musical acts. So also there's a bit of it has to delight and entertain.
Yeah, yes.
This person was saying to me, like, they were a comedian, and they were saying, like, in comedy we have to get a laugh. Like, in circus, do you have to get a gasp?
Yeah.
I'd say yes.
Yeah.
I'd say as much as I might go on about emotion and politics and, like the philosophical reading of it, if at some point you don't have an intake of breath, then it's sort of not the art form. Like, it is that basic, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
And it's what I love about it.
I can still remember seeing Circus Art Chaos over 30 years ago. I don't know if you ever saw them. They were amazing. This massive... It wasn't a big top. It was more like a runway. Once the audience were on 2 sides, and there was a rock band on an open top double decker bus. Somebody was doing BMX tricks on the top of a moving car, and somebody else was juggling chainsaws all at the same time. And there was a story to it as well. Yeah,
amazing. I mean, people talk about those. I don't know. Have you ever chatted to Ben Mason?
No.
So he was the person who founded Circa Media and taught us, but he's written lots of books about kind of circus and especially about our chaos actually, and also about No Fit State, and about the circuses that kind of hold the place of like the radical and the outsider and the thrill of that.
Yeah.
And I think that is an essential bit of circus as well, like that feeling that there's a community and a family that you run away to join, and that it's on the outside of this, and it's a bit transgressive like that. that bit of circus is so strong.
Yeah.
And I do see it in the people that, I teach a lot now. There's a National Centre of Circus Arts in London, Circomedia and Bristol have BAs. They did have an MA in Bristol. I don't know if it's running at the moment. But, there's degrees now that people take that I've taught on. And you still see with the people that are brought in, like, that choose this as their art form, it very often does appeal to people who are neurodivergent or queer, or for whatever reason find themselves on maybe on the fringes of dominant culture. It does seem to still attract that slightly outsider mindset.
Yeah. Does it? I wouldn't imagine it run through families quite the way it used to, though, because, trades don't these days.
I think it does in traditional circus. I think it does. And I think, interestingly, traditional circus can sometimes be more socially conservative, which is sort of interesting in its own way, even as at times like traditional circus is from a class perspective much more radically like outsided. But there are still traditional circuses, especially in Ireland, that are like family dynasties, strong, and I love that world. There's historically been a bit of a rivalry put on between traditional circus and contemporary circus, which I think I try to rail against as much as possible, because I love traditional circus. Like, I think I've got the work that we make is different, but there's so much in common. It comes from the same place.
Yeah, it's the same root, isn't it?
The same roots. And it's the same thing of, in a trad act with a juggler where they drop, and then they succeed to the trick. That, like, succeeding on the third, I use that. Like, I'm using the same thing for a different purpose. Like, we're using exactly the same.
It's dramatic
thing.
tension, the same. Isn't
It's dramatic tension. Like, all the dramatic tools and beats are exactly the same. Like, the fact they know in a traditional circus to have, like, the fact that in a traditional circus you'll have like a really beautiful, dreamy trapeze act or funambulist act, and then you have a clown, that you puncture that beauty with humour. Yeah. Like
like Shakespeare did.
Just like Shakespeare, or just like we do in contemporary circus. It's like we're not far away from each other. It's just like the difference between like whether you're into heavy metal or pop. It's just like a slightly different tone for like your musical tastes.
Yeah.
But it is the same work.
Yeah. I can remember, I don't know if you ever saw it, there was a comedy sketch show in the 80s called Who Dares Wins. And I can remember there was one line, I can still remember, one or two lines, and one of them was, it was about John Major, the ex-Prime Minister. He said he was the only person who ever ran away from the circus to become an accountant, because he wrote a brilliant book on circus, on his family in circus.
Has he? I've never read that. I want to read that. So there's a thing that I don't know how much publicly I want to say this. There's a showman's guild that we're a member of, who help us a lot of stuff. But there's a lot of rules around touring, like around like tachographs and how long you can drive a truck for, and all the things like for haulage that don't apply to circus. There's like loopholes in the things, so that things that would make circus not possible if we had to adhere to like the haulage rules don't apply to circus. And we often wonder, did John Major put those loopholes in? We're like, when did I really want to find out the history of the law of why there's all these loopholes for us? Because there are.
Okay, so you've got this one coming up very soon, and you've got the Ovid piece. So how far are you with that one? Is that sort of waiting till this is on the road before you work on it, or have you already started?
Yeah, very much so. So we open Collaborator at the Place in London at the end of January. So like we're really in the last gasp of it. So at the moment we're just like literally, my partner Alex is upstairs screwing eye holes into weights to try and build a pendulum for that show. Like, this is what's happening today. So yeah, that, and then we go to the Lowry in Salford, and then we go to the Corn Exchange in Newbury, and I think we'll go to Edinburgh. So we don't want, because we've still got a 10-year-old daughter, we don't want to tour it loads, but we also do want to tour it, because we're just waiting. So we're yet to find out the balance of that. But that one is nearly made and then touring. As soon as that's out, our shift will turn to Greed, which is based on the poem is called Eric Scythen, the Ovid poem, but nobody's going to go and see something called Eric Scythen, so we're calling it Read.
Yeah.
And then we can concentrate on that. So we're currently planning to open that in the autumn of 2027, which seems like an insane amount of time, but that means that this year, 2026, between touring Collaborator, we can be research and developing it. So working out. So there is a bit in it. It's basically about a king who chops down a sacred grove to Demeter because he wants to be more powerful than the goddess. Well, the hell are people worshipping the goddess and they could be worshipping him? He chops down a sacred grove. Demeter, for revenge, sends him Hunger. He's this like woman who's like a kind of skeletal cat. And while he's asleep, Hunger climbs into his belly. And when he wakes up, he's so hungry, he can't be full. And he devours and he devours and he devours and he devours. And there's a bit where he eats his own palace. So what we want to do is we want to have this guy on stage with full opulent red theatre curtains. And we want him to eat the stage. So our first task, as soon as we've got a couple of weeks and a space, is to sit down with our designer and a magic person and go, how do you eat steak? Like, it's a bit like in Tess. Our very first things for Tess were, how do you make a horse with people?
Yeah.
Like, Warhorse has done it.
Yeah.
How do you make a horse that's interesting that isn't just ripping off a horse?
Yes.
And how do you make cows? That was like one of our first weeks was horses and cows. And so our first week we're like, how do you eat to theatre? So once we've figured that out, and then how do you make Hunger? How do you make the movement quality? How do you make someone climb inside someone else credibly? How do you chop down a tree on stage and have it be shocking and visceral? Like the big questions that would make this idea work visually, they're the first things that we'll tackle. So then that we can actually go into rehearsals 2027 and do the show in the autumn.
That was Charlotte Mooney, co-founder and joint artistic director of Ockham's Razor, whose new production, Collaborator, will open at The Place in London from the 29th to the 31st of January, before touring to the Lowry in Salford from the 5th to the 7th of February, and the Corn Exchange in Newbury on the 11th of March 2026. For more information, see www.ockhamsrazor.co.uk or the websites of the venues on the tour.
You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.